The stars over Varelia had not shone for weeks. Heavy clouds smothered the night sky, just as the Zarn Dominion had smothered the will of the people. Once a flourishing world of green continents and brilliant oceans, Varelia was now covered. In scorched battlefields, crumbling cities, and the quiet suffering of a proud people brought low. In a hidden mountain pass, far from the Zarn's central patrols, General Rallick stood on a jagged cliffside, cloak flapping in the wind. Below, scattered lights from a refugee camp flickered in the dusk. Smoke drifted from campfires and broken generators. The people had little, but they endured, even now. Rallick clenched the old transmitter in his gloved hand, a device patched, together with scrap metal and memory cores from a forgotten age. The emergency beacon had been active for over a year, constantly broadcasting one message on an ancient frequency, a signal that, if the stories were true, could reach far beyond this sector. But the stars had stayed silent. Still nothing? Advisor Ven asked, stepping beside him. The elder's voice was low, as if afraid even words might draw the Zarn's attention. Rallick shook his head. Not even static, just silence. The Zarn have tightened their blockades. The eastern cities are gone. No word from the lowland settlements. We're cut off. We always were, Rallick replied, gaze fixed on the horizon. The rest of the galaxy forgot us, or never knew we existed. Ven studied him for a moment. You still believe in the stories, don't you? Rallick didn't answer at first. Instead, he looked skyward. Before the Dominion arrived, we taught our children about the early explorers, how they mapped the stars, hoping to find allies among the stars. The beacon was built in secret during the old wars, a signal meant to call for help. Ven's expression darkened. And if no one's out there? Rallick turned to him. Then we hold this place until we can't. Not because it's easy, because it's right. Far above, beyond the reach of the Dominion's orbital jammers, something shifted. A tear in space opened quietly in the void beyond Varelia's far moon. 6 sleek vessels emerged from Slipstream, each marked by the steel-gray hulls and bright insignia of the Earth Union Command. Their arrival made no sound, no declaration, just motion. Aboard the lead ship, EUC Resolute Dawn, Captain Alara Quinn stood at the helm, watching data streams update across the command table. Signal confirmed, said Commander Davis, the ship's tactical officer. Old tech beacon, coded in a pre-standard dialect, but it's definitely a distress call. Looks like it's been looping for months. Visuals? Ilara asked. Davis tapped a panel. A rotating projection displayed the planet below, marked, with Dominion patrols, scorched cities, and isolated resistance pockets. It's worse than the report said, he added. This isn't occupation, it's suppression. Ilara didn't blink. Then we do what we came to do. She stepped forward. Prepare recon teams. No formal contact yet. We observe first, quietly. And if they're still holding on, we make sure they know they're not forgotten. Within hours, dropships detached from the Earth fleet and began entering Varelia's atmosphere, stealthed, silent, swift. Back in the mountain refuge, young Mira, a child of the camp, tugged at General Rallick's cloak just before dawn. I saw something, she said softly. In the sky. A flash. Rallick followed her up the ridge, where the clouds broke just long enough for a strange shimmer to appear, like a sliver of metal slicing through the stars. Then it was gone. Moments later, somewhere far to the north, a Zarn convoy lost contact with command. Patrol units reported missing. A supply tower detonated from within. No signs of who or what was responsible. By midday, resistance fighters in 3 different provinces reported similar whispers. Sudden attacks on Zarn outposts. No known signature, precise, coordinated, and fast. Rallick sat in the command tent that night, eyes fixed on the receiver. Then, without warning, the screen lit up. A pulse. A message. English text, translated into Varelian characters. Hold fast. You are not alone. Silence followed. Rollick stared at the words, unable to speak. He stepped outside and looked up again. The stars had returned. General Rollick stood beneath the evening sky, his eyes fixed where stars once blinked freely. Tonight, they glimmered again, not just with light, but with meaning. The message had been real. The words weren't from a Varelian source or recycled static. It was something new, something human. Hold fast. You are not alone. That message spread like fire through the resistance. In the caves, bunkers, and forests where survivors had hidden for months, hope flared. Quiet conversations turned into hushed strategy sessions. Old soldiers straightened their backs. Even the children, once too afraid to ask questions, looked to the sky with wonder instead of dread. But the Zarn Dominion had noticed too. In orbit, Zarn command ships scanned deep space in growing frustration. Communication towers on the ground pinged endlessly, unable to identify the attackers who had disrupted 3 supply chains in a single night. On the Dominion flagship above Varelia, Commander Iska paced before a projection of the planet's surface. Her eyes flicked to each blinking red marker, locations where their grip had slipped, however briefly. "These attacks are not from local rebels," she muttered. Too clean. Too disciplined. Her lieutenant stepped forward, voice cautious. "Some say off-worlders." Iska's expression hardened. "Then we find them. Now." In the southern valleys of Varelia, hidden among old farming ruins, the first human recon team moved like shadows through the night. Captain Alara Quinn crouched beside a collapsed stone wall, her visor scanning a Zarn comms relay in the distance. 2 sentries, lightly armored, paced the area. "Targets confirmed," Alara whispered. 2-man watch, limited movement. Looks like standard patrol timing. To her left, Specialist Mendez set a silent drone into motion. It slipped through the grass, reaching the relay with ease. "Can disable their scans for 10 minutes, he said. "That's our window." "Good," Alara replied. "We go now." The humans advanced with silent precision. In less than a minute, the sentries were neutralized. No alarms, no mess. Mendez retrieved the intel core while Alara examined the equipment. "Old Dominion tech, running secure backup logs," she murmured. "They're preparing for something bigger." As they moved out, Alara tapped her comm. "Team Echo to Resolute Dawn. First relay is ours. Download complete." "Copy that," came the reply. "Prepping second team. Report to rendezvous point at 0400. Alara glanced back at the field, where the relay now sparked and smoked behind them. It had served the Dominion for too long. Now it was offline. At the mountain base, General Rollick reviewed reports from rebel scouts. The strange attacks continued, always against key infrastructure, always fast. Some described lights in the clouds, brief and surgical strikes. Others swore they'd seen giants in metal walking through fire. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain. The Zarn were shaken. "They've increased checkpoints," said Venn, pointing to a map. "But their movements are reactive. They're afraid." Rollick tapped the edge of the table. "They don't know what's coming." Beep echoed through the chamber. A secure channel lit up. Another message. "We will make contact soon. Prepare your people. Be ready to move." Rollick exhaled slowly. "They're not just striking. They're planning something." Venn nodded. "Then so should we." By nightfall, the humans had completed 5 more strikes. Weapon caches destroyed, satellite jammers disabled. Each hit left behind only fragments and questions for the Zarn. Aboard the Resolute Dawn, Captain Alara reviewed the battle map. "Resistance leadership has responded to our signal," Commander Davis reported. "They're willing to meet." Location? Mountain ridge, northern hemisphere, high winds, rough terrain, but isolated. Alara nodded. "Schedule it." I'll go down personally. Davis looked up, surprised. Captain, protocol, they need to see us, Davis. Not just a signal, not just weapons. They need to know who we are. As the stars brightened over the ridges of Virelia, General Ralek climbed to a high ledge, waiting. His cloak billowed in the cool wind, and his mind wrestled with cautious hope. Then, without warning, a faint hum echoed in the air. A sleek human dropship appeared through the clouds, silent and graceful. It descended slowly, landing just beyond the ridge. Ralek stepped forward as the ramp lowered. From the mist, a figure emerged, armor-clad, visor lowered, but unarmed. Ilara removed her helmet and met Ralek's gaze. I'm Captain Ilara Quinn, Earth Union Command. Ralek stood tall. You came, she nodded. We heard you. The wind carried dust through the ridge valley as Captain Ilara Quinn and General Ralek stood face to face for the first time. Though vastly different in origin, their expressions held the same truth. Neither had come here to watch their people. Far behind them, soldiers waited. Virelian rebels perched along rocky outcrops, weapons drawn but lowered. Human operatives silent in the mist, armor matte and glintless, watching but not threatening. The mountain was quiet, but tension pulsed beneath every breath. I didn't think anyone would answer, Ralek admitted, still studying Ilara. We sent that signal over 100 times. It reached us, Ilara replied, and we don't ignore distress calls, especially not from people still willing to fight. Ralek's brow furrowed. You risked a war with the Dominion to come here. Ilara's tone didn't change. If the Dominion calls this a war, so be it. We didn't come to run. We came to help you take back your world. The general nodded once. That was all she needed. By midday, joint planning began. In the hollowed command cavern beneath the northern ridge, holographic displays flickered to life as Ilara's team outlined a series of tactical strikes. Ralek stood among his senior officers, listening intently. The Dominion has 22 major strongpoints across Virelia, Ilara explained, pointing to the glowing map. They've invested heavily in transport relays and ground-based orbital beacons. We believe they're preparing to convert this world into a supply node for future expansion. Ralek frowned. So we're just one piece of a much larger plan. Yes, she confirmed. But we're going to disrupt that plan. Specialist Mendez stepped forward, tapping the projected location of a key Dominion outpost. This is Fort Saren, the largest Dominion forward base on the continent. If we disable their long-range comms and take the base, we cut off their control of this entire region. Ralek exchanged a glance with his officers. That fort has repelled every attack we've tried. Our weapons barely scratch their walls. We won't be using your weapons, Ilara said calmly. We'll be using ours. The night before the strike, the rebel camp buzzed with quiet motion. Human technicians shared equipment with Virelian scouts. Portable shields, targeting systems, and communications units were quickly adapted for local use. For many Virelians, it was the first time they had seen such technology, clean, efficient, and far beyond what the Dominion allowed. Young Mira, the same girl who had first spotted the human ships, watched in awe as a human engineer repaired a broken generator in under 10 minutes. You're fixing it? She asked. The engineer smiled. We're not here to take over, kid. We're here to give you the tools to stand. Nearby, Ilara and Ralek stood beneath the stars, reviewing final positions. You trust your people to hold the North Wall? She asked. Ralek nodded. They've failed before, but this time is different. This time we believe we can win. Ilara's expression softened slightly. Belief is where every victory begins. At dawn, the assault began. Human gunships soared through low valleys, cloaked until the final moment. Virelian fighters on foot advanced through narrow gorges, moving in sync with their new allies. As Fort Saren's defenses lit up in warning, Precision strikes disabled key towers in seconds. Inside the walls, Dominion soldiers scrambled, unsure who or what they were facing. Human drones swept the ramparts, disarming turrets and disabling surveillance arrays. Explosions rocked the base as reinforced gates gave way to combined fire from both rebel and human squads. Captain Ilara led the front wave personally, advancing with calculated precision. At her side, Ralek fired his pulse rifle, his movements sharp and assured. They breached the central control chamber in under 12 minutes. The battle was over in less than an hour. Later, smoke curled from the once untouchable fort. Rebel soldiers climbed onto the central platform, raising the old Virelian banner. Cheers echoed through the valley. Ilara watched it all from a high vantage point, helmet under one arm. Ralek stood beside her, stunned. "We've never won like this. Not even close." "You will again," she replied. "You just needed a storm." He looked at her. "What happens next?" "We keep going," she said, "one outpost at a time, until the Dominion remembers that this world was never theirs to take." And in the distance, the sky, once so dim, now glowed with light and purpose. Word of Fort Saren's fall spread like wildfire across Virelia. What had once seemed untouchable was now in the hands of the resistance. For the first time in years, rebel signals buzzed with purpose, no longer cries for help, but calls to rise. From the ash-covered lowlands to the jagged cliffs of the north, Virelians emerged from hiding, but the Dominion would not let the loss go unanswered. Less than 48 hours after the strike, Commander Iska convened with her generals aboard the Dominion flagship Vraxor Ascendant. Her cold gaze swept across a projection of Virelia's surface. "Human forces have landed," she stated plainly. "They are not here as observers. They are here to liberate." Silence followed. "Our mistake," she continued, "was assuming this world had no value beyond resources. Now it has become a symbol. We will crush that symbol." She gave a single order. "Bring down the sky." Back on the surface, Captain Ilara Quinn and General Ralek walked the battlements of Fort Saren. Human engineers worked quickly to reinforce the base's defenses, retrofitting Virelian architecture with shield projectors and automated perimeter guns. Drones buzzed overhead. Virelian children watched wide-eyed as sleek machines hovered, scanning the horizon, ever vigilant. "They've seen more in the past 2 days than they did in their whole lives," Ralek said, watching a young boy salute a passing human soldier. Ilara gave a small nod. "And what they're seeing now is what the Dominion tried to erase. What freedom looks like." Suddenly, a shrill tone echoed through her comms. "Incoming. High-altitude breach. 5 ships. No ident tags. They're fast." Ilara's eyes sharpened. "Sound the alarm. Everyone to shelter. Prepare intercept units." Above the base, the clouds churned. Dark shapes cut through the sky, sleek Dominion fighters flanked by drop cruisers. The first wave came in hard, weapons glowing. The sky lit up. Human anti-air batteries responded with precision. Twin bursts of plasma met the lead fighter mid-dive, sending it spiraling into the canyon. Ground-based missile platforms recently, installed by Ilara's crew, locked onto targets and fired with pinpoint accuracy. The Dominion assault had expected disarray. Instead, they met a fortress. Inside the command center, Ilara coordinated air defense. Squad Theta, flank north. Shield walls to 80%. Don't let them touch the landing pads. Ralek, standing beside her, studied the readouts. "They're trying to break our airspace. They're used to ground fights. And we've just shown them the rules have changed." Above the fortress, a new sound echoed, deeper, louder. The Resolute Dawn descended through the clouds, flanked by escort gunships. Its engines roared like thunder, scattering the Dominion fighters. Within seconds, Allied air units engaged. Human strike jets locked into formation with Varelian gliders, creating a swirling dance of speed and precision. Dogfights erupted across the skies, plasma trails streaking across the dawn. One by one, the Dominion ships faltered. Their tactics, built on overwhelming force and fear, fell apart under the sharp coordination of the human-led defense. By midday, the skies were silent. Again, but this time it was the Dominion that had fallen back. The people of Varelia emerged from bunkers and shelters. They watched as humans and Varelians worked side by side, clearing debris, repairing damage, and organizing supplies. What had been two factions had become one force. In the courtyard of Fort Saren, Ralek addressed the resistance over a newly restored broadcast system. We were told we were alone, that no help would ever come. But now we've seen with our own eyes, help wears armor and speaks with fire, but also builds, protects, and listens. He paused. Today the Dominion came for our skies, and we held them. Cheers erupted from the crowd. For the first time in years, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. That evening, Alara stood on the roof of the communications tower watching the sunset blaze over distant peaks. Ralek joined her quietly. "You've changed everything," he said. Alara shook her head. "No, we gave you tools. You chose to rise." He studied her. "There are others, aren't there? Other worlds like ours." She looked to the stars. "Too many. And will you go to them too?" "When the time comes." Ralek smiled faintly. "Then I hope one day we're strong enough to go with you." Alara returned the smile. "You're already stronger than you think." In the days following the aerial victory at Fort Saren, the tide of war shifted across Varelia. Resistance groups emerged from hiding in growing numbers, emboldened by the humans' success. Small settlements began coordinating again. Broken, comms arrays sparked back to life with the help of Earth Union engineers. Where once there had been only silence, now the planet hummed with the pulse of resistance. But Captain Ilara Quinn knew it wouldn't last without something more. Something decisive. Inside the strategy room aboard the Resolute Dawn, holographic projections hovered in the air. Dominion bases, transport routes, energy grids, they had been studying them for weeks. And at the center of it all was Central Spire, the Dominion's heavily fortified command hub in the capital city of Vireth Sol. "This is where the Dominion keeps its hold on Varelia," Alara said, addressing both her command staff and the Varelian rebel leaders. "Their regional governor, fleet controllers, and intelligence corps are all housed inside. If we take it, we don't just win a battle. We break their command structure." Ralek stood across from her, arms folded. His eyes were sharp, focused. "It's more than just a fortress," he said. "It's a symbol. The people see it every day. Glowing towers, steel walls, reminders of who rules from above." "Then we turn that reminder into a message," Alara replied. "And we send it across the stars." The plan was daring. While Dominion attention remained fixed on the reinforced southern regions, human and Varelian units would strike from the northern highlands, using old tunnel systems beneath the capital. Resistance agents already embedded in the city would disable outer defenses just before dawn. Strike teams would split into 3 units, one to sabotage the power cores, one to disable communications, and one to reach the tower's command deck. Alara would lead the final team herself. "Once we take the tower," she said, "we use their own network to broadcast to every corner of this planet." Ralek glanced at the team assignments. "It won't be easy." Alara's voice was steady. "Nothing worth doing ever is." As darkness fell, dropships streaked low over the landscape, masked by interference drones and weather disruption fields. Human soldiers clad in adaptive armor moved in silence. Varelian fighters flanked them, some carrying earth-forged weapons, others gripping blades passed down through generations. The tunnels beneath Vireth Sol were damp and narrow, lit only by soft blue lamps mounted on helmets. The air was thick with silence, broken only by quiet footsteps and the occasional creak of metal. "We're approaching breach point," Alara whispered over comms. "All teams, ready." From above, rebel agents detonated explosive charges on the eastern wall, pulling Dominion sentries away from the main gate. Power surged down as the outer towers flickered and dimmed. "Go!" came the signal. Alara's team surged upward, emerging into the base's inner courtyard just as alarms began to wail. Dominion guards turned too late, stunned by the sheer speed and precision of the strike. The human Varelian force pushed through hallways lined with control terminals and reinforced doors. Resistance fighters moved with practiced ease now. They weren't just holding ground, they were taking it back. In the central chamber, Alara reached the tower's command interface. Sparks flew overhead as Dominion soldiers attempted a last defense. Ralek joined her, covering the rear entrance with precise bursts of fire. "We're in," she said, tapping into the tower's network. "Patching through." A nearby display flickered, then another, and another. Within seconds, screens all across the city, and eventually the entire planet, began showing the same image. Captain Alara Quinn and General Ralek standing side by side beneath the Virelian banner. "To the people of Virelia," Alara began, voice steady, clear, and calm, "you are no longer alone. The Dominion's reign ends tonight, not because we have better weapons, but because you chose to rise." Ralek stepped forward. "You've waited in silence, endured pain, watched others fall, but now look around you. We are still standing, together." The broadcast ended with a simple phrase in both human and Varelian script. "The light has returned." By dawn, the tower was secured. Dominion forces in the capital began a hasty retreat. What had once been a fortress now flew a new banner, one of unity, of defiance, of hope. Outside the city, Varelian civilians flooded the streets. They had once walked with heads lowered. Now they cheered, embracing strangers, waving to human. Patrols as though they were old friends. Alara stood at the top of the tower, watching the sun rise over the horizon. Her armor was scorched, her hands scraped, but her stance remained firm. Beside her, Ralek exhaled slowly. "We've just changed the heart of this world," Alara nodded. "And we're not finished yet. Above the planet Virelia, the skies, once again filled with ships, but these did not bring liberation. The Dominion had heard the broadcast, and they had not taken it lightly. From deep in the core systems, reinforcements arrived in waves, heavy carriers, long-range artillery cruisers, and Hunter-class interceptors. The Dominion's Central Command had declared Virelia a Tier 1 reclamation target, no longer a resource world. Now, it was personal. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Captain Alara Quinn watched as red alerts spread across the tactical display. "They've deployed a full fleet," Commander Davis reported. "Orbital scans show at least 8 capital ships and 3 times as many escorts. Their forward line is already entering the upper atmosphere." Alara didn't blink. "We knew this would happen." She turned toward the window where distant specks of light shimmered against the clouds. "We've shown them that Virelia will not be broken, and now they're coming to prove us wrong." General Ralek stood at the foot of the central spire, which now served as a joint operations base. Around him, Virelians and humans worked side by side. Shield pylons were being installed along the city's perimeter. Artillery turrets were lifted into position with the help of human cranes. Civilians were being moved to protected shelters built into the nearby mountains. "What's their plan?" he asked as Alara descended from her shuttle. "They want to cut us off from orbit," she said. "Once they have control of the skies, they'll deploy ground units and siege weapons. But that's not the full strategy." Ralek raised an eyebrow. Then what is? They're trying to break our spirit. Ilara's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. We've embarrassed them, made them bleed. They want to show the rest of the galaxy that defiance has a price. Ralek nodded grimly. Then we make sure the price is theirs. By nightfall, every major city still under resistance control had received evacuation orders. Rebel fighters deployed flares and signal pulses to guide families to safe zones, while Earth Union shuttles escorted refugees to fortified camps. Still, not everyone fled. Many civilians volunteered to stay behind and help however they could. Cooking, meals, repairing gear, translating communications, or even tending to the wounded. The people of Virelia were no longer waiting to be saved. They were fighting to be free. In the Central Spire's command deck, Ilara reviewed their options. If they take orbit, we lose air cover, Davis said. Our orbital defenses are good, but not against that many ships. We won't hold. The sky, Ilara replied. But we don't need to. We just need to make it too costly for them to stay. She tapped a command console, and a hologram of a dormant orbital platform appeared. It was old, buried in the ice of Virelia's northern pole, a relic from before the Dominion's arrival. We believe this station, call sign Aegis, was built as a last resort planetary defense. Virelian tech sealed away and never activated. Ralek leaned in. You think it still works? I think we need it to. A task force launched toward the polar region that night. Through raging winds and ice-covered cliffs, a combined squad of humans and Virelians advanced on the buried coordinates. The platform's tower rose like a shard of crystal from the frost, half swallowed by time. Inside, cold corridors buzzed with dormant energy. Ilara and Ralek entered the control room together, lighting their path with shoulder beacons. Can it still link with our current systems? Ralek asked. Mendez, already at the terminal, nodded. With a few updates, yes. This was made for a moment just like this. With a final connection, the platform hummed to life. Deep beneath the ice, power surged through massive coils and defense rings. Ancient rail cannons rotated slowly into position, aimed not at the planet, but at the skies above. The Dominion didn't hesitate. Their fleet descended over Virelia's atmosphere, heavy cruisers leading the charge. At first, they met little resistance. Then Aegis fired. From the clouds above the North Pole, a beam of blinding light split the sky. It struck a Dominion capital ship with such force that it tore the vessel in two. Flames streaked across the sky as debris fell into the yawl. Sea cheers erupted across the planet. The second volley took down two more. The third scattered their formation, but the Dominion still pushed forward, determined to overwhelm by numbers and persistence. Now the true battle would begin. In the command center, Ilara stood before her team. They came to show us fear, she said. Now we show them resolve. General Ralek took position beside her. We are no longer hiding. This is our world, and we will not give it back. Across Virelia, every fighter, engineer, medic, and scout prepared for what was coming. The sky burned with falling ships, but the ground, scarred and battered, stood ready because Virelia was no longer alone. Humanity had come, and they were not leaving. The sky above Virelia glowed with fire. Dominion ships burned in the upper atmosphere, streaking across the heavens like dying stars. The Aegis orbital platform fired again and again, buying time, but not enough to stop the onslaught entirely. From above, drop pods rained down like iron hail. Each one slammed into the surface, splitting apart to unleash armored Dominion soldiers, advanced walkers, and mechanized assault units. They struck in coordinated waves, pushing toward the capital and every major resistance stronghold. The final phase had begun. In the central spire, alarms pulsed red. Walls trembled with distant artillery blasts. Above them, human drones zipped through the air. locking onto incoming targets with precision. Below, Varelian fighters reinforced the gates. Captain Elara Quinn tightened her gloves, clipped her sidearm into place, and stepped toward the command platform. "They want to take the ground," she said, voice steady. "Then we give them the hardest ground they've ever walked on." In the northern hills, Varelian scouts armed with human rail rifles fired from rocky cliffs, ambushing Dominion walkers as they approached. Mines, crafted by rebel engineers using old Dominion scrap, detonated beneath enemy crawlers, sending them toppling. At sea, naval platforms activated for the first time in years, launching anti-ship missiles that shattered low-flying transports. But for every blow they struck, the Dominion answered. By dusk, the outskirts of Vareth Sol had become a war zone. The city's shield barrier, reinforced by Earth Union tech, shimmered with every impact. Overhead, Earth's fleet maneuvered desperately to hold the thinning gap between planet and orbit. In the streets below, General Ralek led ground units through narrow alleys, issuing commands through a portable comlink. "Hold this junction," he barked. "No matter what happens, they do not get past this point." A Varelian soldier beside him bled from a wound across the arm, but nodded fiercely. "They won't." Ralek gritted his teeth. "We fight for every street, every wall, every step." Back at the command center, Elara received grim news from orbit. "The Resolute Dawn has taken damage," Commander Davis said through a static-filled transmission. "2 engines offline. Pulling back for emergency repairs. Minimal air support. Available." Elara looked up at the status board. Dozens of red markers, enemy units, were closing in, and she could feel it, the pressure building. But the fear never came. Instead, she stepped up to the central broadcast console and activated the open channel. "This is Captain Elara Quinn to all resistance forces," she said, her voice echoing across comms in bunkers, streets, and towers. "They are pressing with everything they have, because they are afraid." She paused. "Afraid of what happens when we stand together." In the Varelian mountains, rebel fighters cheered. In the darkest hour, you did not fall. You rose. And you inspired more than one world in doing so. Elara's voice stayed strong as explosions echoed outside the walls. "We will not surrender, Virelia. We will not leave, and we will not be broken." On the front lines, her words sparked fire. Varelian fighters surged forward, catching Dominion units in a surprise counterattack. Human snipers covered their advance from rooftops, targeting command drones and support mechs. Dozens of small victories built momentum. An armored Dominion carrier fell into a ravine after explosives planted by a teenage rebel detonated beneath its treads. A battalion of Dominion troops was encircled by Varelian urban fighters and routed in under 20 minutes. And from the shadows, human Black Ops squads slipped behind enemy lines, sabotaging Dominion supply routes and short-circuiting. Communications towers, Elara coordinated it all. With tactical brilliance, she used the enemy's size against them, splitting their forces, forcing them to overextend, then crushing them in tight quarters where mobility and firepower favored her joint units. As midnight neared, only one target remained. The Dominion. Command Walker, a towering, multi-legged monstrosity designed for urban warfare, now marching straight toward the central spire. Its pulse cannons leveled a row of buildings. Its voice amplifier echoed across the ruined streets. Surrender and be spared. But there was no surrender. Elara stood atop the wall with Ralek beside her. "Time for something bold?" he asked. She smirked. "You read my mind." They activated the final trap. Buried beneath the street was a seismic charge, placed days ago under cover of repair work. As the walker stepped into the intersection, Elara gave the signal. A thunderous roar followed. The entire block shook as the charge went off beneath the machine's core. In a flash of blue light and metal, the A Walker folded in on itself and collapsed into the crater. The battle paused. And then a roar of cheers broke across the city. In the aftermath, fires burned and smoke still hung over the skyline, but the lines held. Ralek lowered his weapon slowly. "They threw everything at us." Ilara nodded, exhausted but resolute. "And we're still here." Over the capital, a single flare lit the night, a signal to all of Varelia. The storm had not passed, but the defenders still stood. The first light of Varelia's morning sun filtered through the scorched remains of Vireth Sol. Smoke rose in slow spirals, mixing with the faint morning mist that rolled in from the distant seas. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Captain Ilara Quinn stood on the roof of the central spire, the city's battered heart, and gazed out over the skyline. What had once been a gleaming metropolis was now a sprawling scar of ruins and ash. But it was theirs. The Dominion's grip was broken here. At her side, General Ralek surveyed the scene with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "We won the fight," he said quietly. "But we've only just begun to heal." Ilara nodded. "This planet has been through hell, but it's alive, and so are its people. That's what counts." In the days following the battle, Earth Union engineers and Varelian technicians worked side by side, repairing communications, restoring power grids, and rebuilding defenses. Refugees returned cautiously to their homes, greeted by the sight of patrols carrying food and medical supplies. The humans had arrived like a storm, fierce and unyielding. But they stayed, planting roots alongside the Varelians who had endured years of oppression. It was a partnership built not on dominance, but on mutual respect. A grand council was convened in the rebuilt halls of the central spire. Leaders from across Varelia gathered alongside Earth Union representatives to discuss the future. "General," Ralek addressed the assembly, "today we are not just survivors, we are partners. The Dominion sought to divide us, but together we stand stronger." Captain Ilara stepped forward, voice carrying steady across the room. "Humanity came to help because we saw what the Dominion tried to erase, the courage, the spirit, and the right of a people to choose their own destiny." The council erupted in applause. Outside, children played where once there had been nothing but rubble. Markets reopened, and music drifted through the streets. For the first time in decades, Virelia's people dared to dream again. But the memory of war lingered. Ilara knew the Dominion would regroup. They would not forget the humiliation of defeat so easily. Their empire stretched across countless star systems, and their pride demanded retribution. "We need to be ready," she told Ralek as they watched the sun set behind the mountains. Ralek's gaze hardened. "Then we build something they can't break." Together, they outlined plans for a unified defense force, one blending human technology with Varelian ingenuity. New ships, new weapons, and new alliances were forged in the fires of conflict. Months later, Earth Union envoys announced a new treaty, an alliance between humanity and Varelia that would serve as a beacon for other oppressed worlds. "Together, we will build a federation of freedom," Ilara declared in a broadcast beamed across the galaxy. "A place where no race is conquered and no voice is silenced." In the distant stars, the news rippled through rebel networks and resistance cells. Hope ignited like wildfire. As for Ilara and Ralek, their journey was far from over. They stood at the forefront of a new era, a time when humanity's fierce spirit and unyielding resolve would inspire worlds beyond their own. "The storm has passed," Ilara said softly, "but its power remains." Ralek smiled. "And the dawn has just begun." End.